Hi, and welcome to Learn with Gravaholic. Today I'm talking to podcast host Daniel Rytz. Here are some of the things that we're going to talk about today.
Problem with being an early adopter is that you feel like, oh, it's too late. Like I felt that it was too late in 2017. I was stressed out
Wow.
by the fact that I'm too late into this game. No, but I think that was I think that the one with Cavendish from the tour, that was probably the most awkward one
hmm
because like I kind of knew that he didn't want to do it, but I did it anyway because I thought like the opportunity was there.
How does it feel to be the biggest cycling podcast in Sweden?
No, I don't. I
Do you
mean,
reflect on that?
no. Finding dream bikes from when I started to race and ride, and getting those secondhand. If you're really lucky, you can pick them up pretty cheap and kind of restore them and use them every once in a great while.
Daniel and Niklas at Cykelwebbenpodden are two of the guys that I've been listening to the longest when it comes to podcasts. They've been a true inspiration for me, and I'm super happy to have Daniel on board to be interviewed for me. So without further ado, here is Daniel. Well, hello, good morning, Daniel. How are you today?
Morning. I'm good. Started the day with an hour walk in beautiful Stockholm. The weather is chilly, but yeah, the morning was better than now. But yeah, so far so good.
Do you still have any snow up there?
No, everything melted away the last week. We do have some like rock hard ice in some places.
Ooh.
I discovered on my walk, but no, it's kind of dry by now. So yeah, looking forward to a few rides this weekend. Maybe not on snow, but on tarmac.
Lovely, lovely. So let's start from the beginning. I'm so super curious. I mean, I've been listening, and I'm a big fan of the podcast that you guys have since I started cycling like 3-4 years ago now. But how did you come about starting cycling, and why?
Oh, so going way back. I mean, I've always cycled, always biked. Growing up on the sort of on the countryside, it was a means of getting to friends, and then using the bike as a toy, basically with your friends. Uh, and then I moved to Stockholm, where I still live, uh, to work and study in my like late teens, early 20s, I guess. And by then, the bike had sort of disappeared from my life, but I still had some kind of connection to biking, I guess. Um, and I don't really know why, but I had this is a weird story. I had shoulder surgery in now it's more than 20 years ago, but during my rehab of the shoulder surgery, I started like reading bike magazine and then looking at bikes, and I actually bought a bike while I was still like incapacitated from the surgery, and like vowed to use the bike as rehab when I was able to. So then I started riding like mountain bikes again after that, and then it just sort of spiraled from there. So started with some like mountain bike free riding stuff, uh, and instead of turning towards like more extreme free riding or downhilling as many of the guys that I was riding with went for, I went more the sort of cross country marathon route, and from there on to road cycling, and that's basically it. And yeah, been doing that ever since. Started racing on the road, I think in 2002, I think, and yeah, here we are,
That's crazy.
25 years
That's
later.
crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, I can also. I mean, cycling, it is like a virus. It is something like people almost call it like a drug, right? It's just so liberating. So such gives such a freedom from movement to, but also the exercise perspective of things, and the community, I guess, as well. You've also experienced coming to a new city, a big city like Stockholm, and just getting to know people.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
But I have a question. I mean, you touch upon it sometimes in the podcast as well, but I'm curious. Can we get a rundown of how many bikes you actually
Oh,
own?
uh, it's in the 30s.
Wow.
Yeah. Um,
So is that like a hobby of its own, kind of almost?
But that's the thing, and you touched on it, because like cycling is, it's the riding, it's the training, that's one aspect of it, and then it's the racing, that's one aspect of it. It's the tech, like the bikes, that's another one. Following the pro scene, that's another one.
Mm,
Community, that's so yes, it's definitely part of it. And for me, it's like it's kind of like a cycle in the meaning that, sometimes you're not super excited about the training, okay, but then you can focus on the social aspect or the cultural aspect of cycling, and then you get tired of that, and then you can focus on your bikes or whatever. Yeah, so that's kind of it. But the thing is, the bikes that I have, well, some of them, and definitely the ones that I'm riding and racing now, are really really nice bikes. um, but some of them, and right now, my what I've been doing is basically finding dream bikes from when I started to race and ride, and getting those secondhand. If you're really lucky, you can pick them up pretty cheap and kind of restore them and use them every once in a great while. And the rest of the time, you can just enjoy owning them, I guess, which is not a really good way of motivating having them. But yeah, I have lots of bikes.
that's super cool. Yeah, it's always so funny when you start talking about that on the podcast, and that kind of segues into to the next question. And one of the big reasons why I wanted to have you on the podcast, and potentially also Niklas, but I know that just like him, my his life is complicated with work and kids and everything. So I figured it was just easier to get hold of you to some extent.
Very
But
flexible.
nonetheless, how you and I want to talk about the partnership that you have with Niklas as well, right? Because you seem to be super good friends, and maybe that's the question itself. Actually, was that how it started? Where did the idea come from? I know that. How did it all come to be?
Yeah. So yeah, besides just riding a lot, I've also worked as a cycling journalist for quite a long time. I used to have a, like, way back. I used to have a blog for Bicycling magazine, the Swedish edition of that, and I was also the sort of road editor at large for the magazine, for I think almost 10 years. And then I stopped doing that around 2016, I think, something like that. Um, but then it sort of grew that I was missing doing that as well. So we started the website Cykelwebben, um, publishing, whatever we felt like, basically, without any real direction on it. Um, but I think
And you say we already. That was
yeah,
already you
so
and Niklas then.
yeah, I started it, and then I brought in Niklas and a few other friends who also did
Okay.
some writing in the on the website.
Hmm.
Uh, but I think that the problem was that without a deadline and without any kind of pressure, we struggled to get content out there.
Okay.
I think maybe you can relate.
Yeah.
Well, you push out a lot of content, which is super impressive. But we were sort of struggling in getting it really off the ground and getting it running. We had a few things that really, gained traction back in those days, but uh, what I realized was that, Niklas and me, we had a similar view on maybe the pro scene and racing and stuff like that, and we kept talking about it, and I kept sort of nagging him to try and do a podcast, because I was listening to like a lot of podcasts back then. uh,
Yeah.
and finally I just went and bought a recorder, sort of, told Niklas that I'll be at your place, this evening, and let's just try it. Because yeah, we needed to get something done, and that was in 2017. And since then, we've put out the new episode every second week, plus bonus episodes to our patrons, who we love, also every second week. So now we do a podcast basically every week.
Yeah, so that basically, I mean, I just looked now before. I think it was 164th you just released this week, was it?
Yeah, 163 or 164.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of the other, and then bonuses on top of that. So that's a lot since
Yeah, it's a lot.
2017.
Yeah,
That's a lot. I mean, I'm super impressed by you guys. It's really really awesome. Um, One thing, I mean, 2017 still, that was, I also started listening to podcasts quite early, but that was still, it's still sort of very early to start a podcast,
yeah,
2017. And I just listened to the news. I listened to another podcast that's called Break It. Maybe you know it, Swedish one about the startup scenes.
yeah,
And
yeah.
they were also talking about how podcast really, there was one company, whatever, long story short, the the essence is that they consider podcasting still sort of in an early stage of evolution that hasn't really settled. So, but it's for me that has listened to podcasts and you guys that has been established for such a long time. It is quite remarkable that that is still the case.
For sure, for
Uh,
sure. And I think for me, like starting it back then, I was already okay. I'm an early adopter to basically tech and media in general. I think I've always been. And the problem with being an early adopter is that you feel like, oh, it's too late. Like I felt that it was too late in 2017. I was stressed
wow,
out by the fact that I'm too late into this game. And looking at it now, I'm like, oh my god, we had there was such an opportunity to do something more, whatever.
exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
But um, how does it feel to be the biggest cycling podcast in Sweden?
No, I don't. I
Do you
mean,
reflect on that?
no.
You have just checked Apple now. You have a rating on 4.6 or 4.8, which is really really good, and like 400 comments, that really positive comments about it.
Yeah, no.
It's just
It's kind of surreal. Um, like we made T-shirts like a while back and
yeah,
sold to listeners. And like the first time I saw one in the wild, like seeing someone wear it, it was like really surreal. And it's really like we met in Halmstad at Gravel Grit and Grind 2 years ago, right? And you came up
yep. With a
and
fanboy moment with a
yeah,
selfie.
those interactions are amazing. And I get surprised every time, and I think it's fantastic having that connection to our listeners. In the 10 years that I wrote my the stuff for the column or the blog for the magazine, like seriously, I have as many interactions in a week with our listeners as I did over those 10 years, which is the fantastic thing about the new media landscape that we're living in. Uh,
Mm.
but no, I like I don't reflect on being the biggest Swedish cycling podcast, and I don't think about it that much. No, but it's nice.
Did you ever consider to do it in English? Because I mean, the quality that you guys produce of the content, your knowledge and everything, and I want to get into some of those bits and pieces little bit later. But did you ever consider doing it in English so that you would get a broader audience potentially?
First of all, thank you so much. Second, our USP, like our unique selling point, is the I think the Swedish language,
Mm,
which then also is our limiting factor.
yeah,
So, but I think we'll stick to the Swedish market. There are so many really good English podcasts out there. I think you do have a point in I think there is enough space for another one, and I think there is space for something that we do. But I think we sort of decided that the we want to reach the Swedish audience. There isn't really that much, like there is no Swedish cycling media at the moment, really, apart from us.
yeah.
So someone needs to cover that. We
There
also
are a few other outlets that's trying, right? But you are by far the best. My point of view. Sorry,
thank you, thank you.
sorry, but not sorry.
So I mean, the magazine that I used to write for that doesn't exist anymore. There are a few like yeah. I mean, of course, there are some like yourself, some Instagram personalities and influencers. There is like a new startup that's trying the YouTube format, but that's irregular. Um, so I mean, there needs to be someone covering the Swedish scene as well, and I think doing that in English sort of defeats the purpose.
Yeah,
And I think the Swedish cycling crowd deserves something in their native language.
yeah. No, that's true. So I fully totally respect that choice. and it gives you guys also, of course, the dynamic in being able to speak your native language and everything as well is just different as well.
Yeah.
And speaking about the dynamic, you and Niklas, I need to dig a little bit deeper into this.
Yeah.
You guys seem to have such a amazing relationship, and you sort of you're similar but still different, so you complement each other in a way. Well, how do you feel about the relationship with Niklas?
Niklas is a fantastic guy. I think it comes through. I like him a lot. I think he likes me as well. But like you say, we complement each other. Of course, there are, but I think that's it. We respect each other. We know who's good at what. And over these now almost 5 6 years of doing the podcast, we've really found a balance where we complement each other in the sort of the tempo that the podcast is going. And I think one of the big attractions of the podcast itself is that, and I hope this is how it's being perceived from the outside as well. It's like, I think it's our ambition is basically that you as a listener feel like you're part of our conversation. Like it's we try and be inclusive. We try to be open to that, and we try to keep it on a pretty uh, like decent level in terms of knowledge and in terms of facts and stuff, but also very lighthearted all the time. I think something that both me and Niklas have is that we do know of each other's and our own weaknesses,
Hmm.
and we sort of own up to them, which means that it's okay for the other one to criticize the other one. Uh,
I think it's on that note. I think it's so funny how you're doing sort of the tech segment, and Niklas is kind of sort of being
Completely
giving you a little bit of a
uninterested.
hard time about it, and that's just such a funny dynamic in
Yeah.
between you guys.
Yeah. No, but I don't think we realized or knew in the beginning that that's how it would turn out. But I think it's been
Yeah,
like just a lucky circumstance.
but do you guys? I mean, obviously, you talk after you're recording, but do you guys try to analyze and think about what how it was and how you could do it better and stuff? Do you do those kind of reflections?
We do.
Yeah.
Yeah, we definitely do. And I think I've done it a little bit more than Niklas because I also edit the podcast, so I hear everything.
Oh, okay. Yeah, of course. Yeah.
And I listen to it more, maybe more intentionally than he does. So the production flow is basically, we meet up, we finalize the script together over like an hour, a couple of hours, depending on how
Hmm.
focused we are and how unfocused we are. Then we press record. And nowadays, we really try and record as it is live,
Yeah.
so with as little interruptions as possible. Um, Then I edit the episode, send it to Niklas to listen through to make sure there's nothing like wrong that I missed or whatever, and then we publish it. So
Mhm.
like he basically only listens to a really almost finished product.
Got you. Got you.
But I've listened to our whole learning process. But I can see that
Yeah.
over the years we've become so much more like efficient and professional in doing what we're doing. So
Yeah.
yeah,
How, so in addition to you and Niklas, you also sometimes you bring on guests. The most frequent guest lately has been Mange,
yes,
who is amazing. He's actually been on this show too.
I know,
So,
yeah, yeah,
and then, but you also tap into the pro scene, right? And you have, especially we will talk. I was going to ask you about this explicitly as well. But you have some of the women pros that's been on the show. I find that so sort of liberating as well. That you're so tapped into that scene of the Swedish pros, and you give them space as well and all. How do you feel about, and how's that going?
yeah. That was actually, it was a conscious decision from us from the beginning to make as much space. And now, thinking of it, we probably don't, but like our ambition is to give as much space to the female pros as the male pros.
You do that awesomely, I would say. You're
Thank you.
like the most what's the word in English? Like the most sort of you have an equilibrium in between talking about the men pros and the
Yeah.
women pro, both in Sweden and also in the international scene as well. I would say.
Yeah, I mean, we're trying, and we can see that from when we started until now. And I think that maybe the few years before we even started, women's racing has really taken off in a big way. But looking at it from a Swedish perspective, like our female riders, the women pros in Sweden, are so much better than the men, and there's more of them. And from a very practical perspective, there are more of them in our area near Stockholm,
Mm.
which
Yeah,
means
yeah,
that,
yeah.
it's easier for us to grab them and have them on the show. So I think that's one of the reasons why we've. I mean, practicalities. That's one of the reasons, and I think. Uh, I mean, of course, we'd like to have um, all of the Swedish male pros on as well, but they are harder to sort of get hold of.
Yeah.
But definitely, it's been a conscious decision for us to have to give space to the women.
Yeah, I really like that part that you find that balance and that you don't prioritize just the men scene. Uh, but I wanted to ask you about that. What's your point of view? What's your opinion about sort of why is the Swedish women so much more successful than the men right now? And
Ooh.
I mean, it's just completely incredible. And on top of that, we have the difference in between this extreme success of Norway and Denmark, right? And then Sweden, it's not that we are sort of physically different. It's just that, I mean, there are so many aspects of it. What's your opinion, and how do you see that?
But I think it's like kind of a culture of winning or participating. Like when the women see that, oh, she can go pro, then I can probably do it too. Like I can hang with her on racing and training, so that means that I can do it too. um and probably the same thing with the guys, but I think also kind of practicality wise, there's been very little Swedish representation in sponsorship and in team management and in all these things that make it easier for Swedish guys to get on teams. Like there's no one that can bring in a friend or can recommend another rider that they used to race with. So
Mm,
that's one thing from the top down, so to speak.
yeah.
From the bottom up, we are clearly lacking. We're clearly lacking like enough infrastructure in Sweden to support someone rising to the pro ranks. There's basically no Swedish continental teams. There's definitely no pro Conti teams in Sweden,
Mm.
um, which means that there's no real pathway for young Swedish riders to get visibility in big races in Europe and taking those steps all the way up to World Tour racing.
But where does that come from? Is it the lack of will? Is it the federation? Is it the local clubs? Where do you see? I mean, we don't need to point fingers in one special direction, but what's your take?
I think it's a combination of a lot of things, but I mean, a main thing is that cycling isn't considered a mainstream or interesting sport to sponsors and so on. So
Mm.
yeah, there's so much. Like last year, there was this new legislation that made it harder to arrange races on open
Yeah,
road.
true.
Um, the national championships was almost cancelled because of a formality in terms of the applications and whatever. So they had to move it to a raceway. Um, Really, like the status of the sport is so low that it's hard to get something going.
Yeah.
And I mean, that responsibility lies on the federation.
Mm.
That is their job to sort of um, make sure that the status of the sport is on a high enough level to make it interesting for different types of stakeholders. And like clearly they're not doing a great job. Sorry.
Okay, got you. But you touched upon one thing, and it's sort of the culture of cycling as well in society in general. And I mean, Denmark is pretty obvious. They have a complete different. But in Norway, I wouldn't say it's not the same way. So it would be more similar to Sweden, but still they're successful. But
Yeah,
here's now I'm coming to my question.
yeah,
And I mean, and culture is built upon many different aspects and things, right? So one of them is how we are influencing, or let's use that word influencing within quotes, people to also start riding bicycles in different manners, right? And you are part of that.
mm.
So, do you see yourself as an influencer of some sorts, and do you do that then consciously towards maybe also building that community and the culture in Sweden?
Uh, Reluctantly, yes. I think. I think we do. I mean, we do get messages, which is amazing. Like we get messages saying, oh, it's I don't think we reach people who aren't interested. Like we reach people who are interested, and maybe we can deepen their interest. So
Hmm,
we do get messages, and we've had a few of these. Like, oh, I used to ride mountain bikes a lot. You guys made me buy my first road bike, stuff like that. Uh,
cool.
and that is of course very cool. Um, Regarding like influencing and stuff like that, my having done this for such a long time, having and also being curious and being very sort of wanting to know more, I've picked up a few things over the years, and I do enjoy sharing that with our audience, and
Yeah.
kind of helping out and kind of teaching people new things, or things that I take for granted that is really not something that you would know starting out, or stuff like that. So yeah, maybe more of a, I don't know, teacher than an influencer. Not sure.
Yeah. I mean, many people have a negative connotation to influencer, right? And I have talked to many people on this show about it as well. And that it's a fact. People don't want to be sort of associated with an influencer because when you say influencer, you think about sort of, yeah. Now I'm maybe saying this stupidly as well, but girls doing like makeup commercials or whatever. I mean, those kind of things.
Mm.
But I think we're all influencing in some sorts. So it's not it's more the verb than maybe the title that
Yeah,
that
yeah, but
I'm
I mean,
talking about.
everything that gets more people on bikes is a great thing.
Yeah,
I mean, doesn't
at
really
least
matter why.
from our perspective is yes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. Oh, don't get me started on that debate. That's a different thing.
um yeah, okay, so taking it back a little bit more towards the podcast again, and we spoke about it earlier. The separation in between sort of the regular episodes and the bonus episodes, and that you went sort of on this path to put it behind a paywall,
Mm.
basically. Tell me, what's your? And I'm sorry to say that I'm still not a member of your community, being a patron, so I'll have to do better.
It's
Um, but where did that come from, and how do you how what's sort of the thinking around that?
I mean, it's kind of it's sort of we threw it out there. We started with the Patreon. So Patreon is a platform. Basically, you can go in and you sign up, and you put in your credit card details, and then it automatically it draws an amount every time we release an episode. So you support the podcast with a small amount every for every episode, and we just threw that up without sort of adding any value. The only value we added was that, okay, now you're like officially a friend of the podcast. We mention your name, and that's it. And a few people signed up, and we were like, wow, this is amazing. People are signing up and sort of helping us out, supporting the podcast. And then we had our friend Matthias Reck, who is a coach in the uh, Lidl Trek team,
Mhm.
um, for both the men and the women. And he's a fantastic guest to have. He's a super interesting speaker, always some interesting anecdotes, and of course the latest and greatest stuff about training. We had him on, always really long episodes, and we came up with the idea that maybe we should cut him off after about an hour and a half or whatever, and
Yep.
and and take the last 30 minutes exclusively for the patrons, to give them something for, as a reward for them actually already supporting the podcast. So
Hmm.
we did that. We mentioned that in the podcast. We put it up behind a paywall, um, and the numbers just went through the roof.
Wow, cool.
So we had so many people signing up to get access to that.
Yeah.
Like, in our minds, it was, giving the people who had already supported us something. And
Hmm.
so many new people signed up, and we were like, okay, might be onto something here. And yeah, so we continue doing that, and yeah, it works nice. It works nicely. We do the bonus episodes. They are maybe, so our regular episodes aren't super structured either, but they have at least some type of structure to them. The bonus episodes are less formal, I would say. Uh,
Yeah.
even more conversation type, where we sort of reach out to the community, or yeah, maybe enhance the I don't know, lighter parts of podcasting.
But you also, as I understood it, one of the reasons why you do it, and maybe you need to confirm this, but you kind of reinvest that money that you get somehow into also be able to provide more sort of content. And yeah, you said mentioned, I think it was now last episode as well, something about going to France to see the Tour de France and so forth.
Yeah,
Um, is
I
that
mean,
kind of the one of the reasons as well, or
yeah, we have set up. I mean, the podcast is an aktiebolag, as we say in Sweden, like an
yeah,
LLC. I would guess that is in English. But we are the worst people to run a business, like, ever. Uh, Nothing. Well, there, there's very little personal gain, in terms of financials, for
mm,
us, and basically all the money stays in the podcast, and, like you say, reinvesting. So we went to the start of the Tour de France in Denmark 2 years ago. We went to Bilbao together with Magnus and Johan
yeah,
from Bravur, this summer, which is amazing, and that is paid for by basically the money that we get from our patrons. And in turn, we put out like one episode every day we were there, um, back towards our patrons. So yeah, it's kind of reinvesting into the business.
super cool.
Yeah.
Speaking about going to the big races and talking to some of these the bigger names of cycling, you just had one of them on your show. You had an interview with Lachlan Morton. How was that?
Oh yeah, yeah, that was really nice, and thanks to our friends at POC, who helped set that up. Lachlan and his brother Gus, they were in Stockholm promoting their new film about the Great Divide, and yeah, we were invited to the film, and then the day after, we got the opportunity to talk to Locke and Gus, which was super super interesting. They are like really chill guys, super friendly, super easy to speak to. It was, just like opening the can and letting them just run with it.
Were you nervous?
No, not really. Uh, like okay, a little bit starstruck maybe, because you've seen so much of them, right?
Yeah,
Um, but honestly, like, I've run into Lachlan a couple of times at the gravel races that I've done,
yep.
um, and then it's kind of funny seeing him in that element, because in that element everyone's like watching him and being, very much like
Hmm.
he's a star in that environment. But it was, I mean, it was really chill. They had been for a mountain bike ride out in Hellas here in Stockholm. We had lunch with them out there, just chatting with them during lunch, which meant that we sort of, we'd already established something with them before
Yeah.
sitting down to do the interview, which was nice.
But how is it like walking around in the pits of Tour de France, for example? Like, and how do you do that? Like, just ask someone to ask them for an interview and put the mic in their face, basically. I mean, I try. I think you tried to do it with the was it with the Mark Cavendish, right? As well. I
Oh
mean,
yeah, yeah.
how do you feel about that? You need to be super brave doing it, right?
Yeah, it is actually, it's quite weird doing that in that setting.
Yeah.
Like, I've done media camps before.
Hmm.
And then you're sort of expected to do it. You have time slots, and
Yeah.
they come to you, they know what's expected from them, and so on. But like at the tour, we sort of took a chance with Mark Cavendish. Sorry, I'm not Mark with him, uh, because we were at the hotel where Astana was staying, by chance basically, and we saw him like walk onto the bus, and I was like, let's just wait outside until he comes out and try and grab him. And
Mm.
yes, for sure, that is because that he's a little bit on the defensive towards media in general, and we're two guys with a microphone, and he doesn't know us. But like you say, again, like you have to get into character. Like this is not me, the person. This is me, the podcaster. And yeah, you basically just do it. But yes, it's quite daunting actually doing it the first time.
Has there been any awkward moments, any things that you could share, any things that sort of went wrong, or I mean, in any kind of character that would be?
No, but I think that was, I think that the one with Cavendish from the tour, that was probably the most awkward one,
Hmm.
because like I kind of knew that he didn't want to do it, but I did it anyway because I thought like the opportunity was there.
Yeah.
uh, and he cut it a little bit short, or he cut it very short. And I think we could have, because we were also speaking to his now sprint coach and friend Mark Renshaw, his previous uh, lead out man.
Hmm.
And of course, I mean, we could have had a 10-minute interview with Renshaw, if we would have wanted to, because he was very friendly and stuff. But Mark came out, and when Cavendish cut it short, Renshaw also was like, "Yeah, I need to." He didn't want to be nicer than Cav, I guess. I don't know.
But you weave in, of course, from your own experience as well, and you're building that experience even more now when you are sort of, I don't know what to call it, like semi gravel pro kind of, or gravel pro with no borders.
Yeah.
What's that like? And
Gravel Pro
plan.
is kind of a joke, but for sure. I mean, we are, yeah, I'm part of the No Borders gravel team. We are generously supported by, oh, I had to be like BMC and
Yeah,
SRAM
of course.
and Velocio clothing, which has been like a fantastic experience. They support us with everything from everything you need to basically run a gravel season. And I mean, I'm far from pro in terms of performance, for sure. But just being able to, you know, be part of that the gravel racing scene that is now emerging and sort of taking shape, and still kind of early in the development of that, has been, yeah, very cool. So I've done that for 2 years, did a few races around Europe, did both UCI World Championships, both times in Italy, 23, 22 and 23. Um, yeah, it's a pretty cool experience.
So, but you're continuing this year as well, right? 24.
Yes.
Yep, cool. And so what's your plan now for 24? I guess, I mean, I just saw now that the World Championship is going to be in Belgium instead, so a very different course most likely, and
Yeah.
I really want to go myself, even though that I might not be able to make it myself to qualify. I really hope that I can make it just to be there in person. I would love to see that. Um this year, let's see if I can make it. But what's your plan for 24?
I really don't know, to be honest.
Ah, okay.
The only thing I actually know is that I'll be going to the Tracka in Girona early May. I'll do that. I've done that the 2 last years as well. And then I kind of will take it from there. I will probably ride a few events here in Sweden because it's close by, and there are some new events popping up.
Yeah.
Hopefully qualify for Worlds this year as well. But apart from that, I'll try and take it as it comes, the season.
Okay.
Probably a little bit less travel. I just started because I do have a day job on the side of everything else, and I just switched roles, which means that I will, yeah, probably won't have as much time basically to
Yeah.
to travel and to race.
Yeah.
But for sure, starting out with Tracka, and we'll take it from there.
Cool. So what, but sort of beyond this year, do you have any sort of still bucket list things to do on the bike or with the bike or with the podcast, to be honest, as well?
Oh, that's a really good question. I think I would like to do some more, like, I've done gravel racing and riding a lot over the last few years, but I mean, to be completely honest, my heart is still closest to road racing.
Damn.
Yeah. um, I think maybe want to do some amateur stage racing in different parts of the world. Would like to do some more like Italian Gran Fondos, which are like nice. Maybe do like Etape du Tour, and stuff like that.
Hmm.
I think that is mostly what I'm sort of wanting to do. Otherwise, I feel I'm pretty set. I think I've found a good level for my writing right now.
Oh, that's fantastic.
For the podcast, it would be amazing to be able to travel more and spend more time at the tour, for example, or follow
Yep.
the Giro around, or going to the spring classics would be amazing. But again, uh, traveling and combining everything. Niklas has a bigger family than I do. I'm more flexible. And it's so much like you want to do your own writing, you want to follow the pros, you want to, it's a lot of stuff,
Yeah, I can imagine.
so
So
many
speak
things to do, so little time.
exactly. I hear you.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Well, so speaking about the tour, and there's more and more names announcing their schedules for this year, and I know that you guys talk about this a lot on the podcast as well, and you have a huge interest in this. So do I, but maybe not as much as you guys, and I'm not as sort of into it, even though that I follow it as closely as I can. But what's your hot takes on the winners this year for the tours? I want to hear your sort of three winners now.
Yeah, no hot. I don't think I have any hot takes. I mean, it's. I think it's. I mean,
Okay, let's leave the hot takes then. Let's do just
it's
predictions.
Jonas. It's Jonas or Tade, basically. And if they mess it up, Geraint Thomas might have a shot. Both Tade and Geraint are doing the Giro Tour
Zero, yeah.
double, which
Mhm.
is cool. But yeah, let's see how that works out. Um, I don't. Yeah, Thomas hasn't done that before. I think he's tried once, but he crashed out of both the Tour and the Giro that year. I think the same year. Never mind. I think it's between Jonas and Tadej, and since Tadej is doing the Giro, I would hold Jonas as the favorite. And then we'll see. I mean, Remco is going to be up there. Yeah, we'll see. I mean, there might be some new young guys showing their skills, but for now, I think the guys that we've seen over the last few years will still hold the top positions.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I think I'm honestly super excited this year about the tours because they as you say the mix of now just having Jonas and Roglic split it up in two different teams as well. That's gonna just make a different dynamic as well. So I
Yeah,
think
for sure. Yeah. I think,
mm,
like you say, the move to Bora for Roglic, I think, is going to be beneficial to everyone, not least the fans. I think Bora has shown themselves in terms of racing actively and really, really like putting their stamp on racing. And I think now with a leader that has the potential to win Grand Tours, I mean, it's not going to be worse. It's going to be, yeah. So it really could be best case scenario, like fireworks, all the teams going at it against each other and so on. Worst case is that everyone looks at everyone else and thinks that everyone else is super strong, and it's going to be kind of locked in and locked down. But let's hope for fireworks.
yeah, me too. Um, so speaking about content, but also the podcast, what really motivates you? What keeps you going? I mean, you've been going now since 2017, and that's now 7 years. What's how are you able to continue? Like,
I have no idea. Honestly, I have no idea. The deadline is there. Like, we need to release an episode every Tuesday. But still, I mean, we still follow cycling as intensively or intensely as we always have. Something is always happening, which is, it's of course we're as surprised as everyone else that you can actually sit down and talk about cycling for, well, a good hour at least, every 2 weeks, and there's always something to talk about. I think now it's, I mean, of course, some weeks are tougher than others to actually, pull yourself together and do it. But most of the time, it's sort of it just happens because I think we've mentioned it on the podcast. Like, you can, because we record on Sunday evenings, and like you can go around on the Sunday and have a little bit of, maybe not anxiety, but oh, we have to do the podcast this evening, like that. And then as soon as like Niklas shows up, it's, the mood is switched. We're on. We sort of yeah, we fire each other up, I guess, and the dynamic comes into play. And we sit down and we look through what's happened over the last 2 weeks, and it's just, yeah, it's on. It's always fun. Like, when we hit record, we always have fun.
That's amazing.
So it's something to look forward to also.
Yeah, yeah. That sounds great. So my last question, Daniel, I usually ask this to everyone that comes, if they can share any tips and tricks for other aspiring, now in your case, like podcasters. My sister is just about to start one, so I'm going to
Oh,
meet
wow.
her on Monday. And so what advice can you tell me that I can bring to her, or that she can listen to this and maybe listen to you?
My maybe you've heard this somewhere else, but like, just do it. Which is, I mean, yeah, it's super cliche, but anything is better than nothing. And just like, don't be so don't make it too hard for yourself, and don't be too hard on yourself. Like, just put something out there and see if it works. Like, the first episodes we recorded with one handheld, very simple recorder that we sort of both leaned into. After a while, we realized that it's one mic, but it's two channels, right? So Niklas was on the right side, and I was on the left side, and I didn't even know how to mix them into the same track, which meant that it was really like one was on this side and one was, and then over time you learn and you refine, and yeah. So I mean, just start by putting something out there, see where it takes you, and if it doesn't work, start over, do something else.
Yeah, that's great advice. Thank you very much, Daniel, for taking your time and sharing all this, your insights, your learnings, and your experience with us. I
No
really
worries.
appreciate it.
Appreciate the invitation. Always nice to speak to someone with similar interest and passion.
I appreciate that.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Have a nice weekend, and I really hope that you get a nice couple of miles, as we say in Swedish,
Yeah. So
done.
metric miles.
Metric miles. Yeah.
Yes. And the same to you.
Thank you very
Right.
much.
See you.
See you. Colt. What a guy. He has so much passion, so much energy, and a lot of bikes. So the passion really shines through. I wish all the best to Niklas and to Daniel and their podcast. I hope they continue for another 7 years or so, at least. Love to listen to their content. I know it's in Swedish, as he spoke about, but if you are Swedish and if you enjoy my content, you will definitely enjoy their content. They are great and even better than me. So yeah, enjoy. But no, this is what the show was all about today. Next week, I'll bring you someone else really interesting to listen to. So don't miss a beat, and see you in a week. Take care. Until then, bye bye.